The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Hi guys, quick one before we get into the episode. This episode is sponsored by Zencastr, which is the production suite that I've used from the very beginning of this podcast. And if you're interested in starting your own podcast, hang around at the end of the episode for our 30% discount referral code. Thanks.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything
Nailed it.
is the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my god, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. Joining me today is the founder of Riposte magazine and author of the brand new book, Watching Women and Girls. It's Danielle Pender. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my absolute pleasure. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yes, I'm good. Thank you. It's nice and sunny in London, so all good at the minute.
Can't complain. Let's start off with the book. Out on the 23rd of June, Watching
Yes.
Women and Girls. Tell us what it's all about.
Well, Watching Women and Girls, it is a collection of 12 short stories that explore the experience of being watched as a woman. So it's 12 different narratives, 12 different women, and they range from sort of young girls up to a 75-year-old artist. And it's very much sort of exploring that feeling of being watched, which I think a lot of people, in particular women, feel. It's kind of exploring what that gaze does to us, like how we perform for it, how we shrink ourselves in its sort of glare, sometimes how we internalize it and then police ourselves, and how we also project it onto others. So it's a kind of big exploration, I guess, of the male gaze through different perspectives.
And that's obviously something that goes back thousands of years as society has sort of evolved and grown. But I imagine it's even more prevalent now with how huge social media is.
Yeah, definitely. It is. And I think it's kind of the way that we watch each other and the way that we project ourselves and our image and our sort of, personal brand. I think it's a huge issue. But weirdly, I kind of touch on social media in different stories, but I don't know, I felt a bit that I didn't want to root it in that sort of format or from that perspective, because sometimes, when you read about technology in books, it kind of dates really quickly.
That's true.
I was really nervous about doing that, but I definitely do touch on some sort of elements of of how we project ourselves and how we very much sort of keep an eye on each other through the lens of social media.
Yeah, and as you said, it's an anthology of short stories from different perspectives, women at different stages of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about short stories, that short form medium, that drew you in?
I think I've always really loved them. I had a friend that gave me Raymond Carver's Cathedral when I was 19 or something.
Yeah.
And I just really love the way that he writes in particular, those real vignettes of life where you don't really know, you don't know the backstory and you don't know what happens afterwards, but you get everything that you need from that moment, that sort of short story. And I think they're really rich and it felt like I wanted to explore very specific moments in these women's lives. And I didn't want to sort of, and I wanted to explore this theme through lots of different perspectives, and I didn't feel like I could do that in a novel. So it just, the format of the short story really sort of lent itself to this this idea that I wanted to look at.
Yeah, it really focuses in on the moment and the event itself, as opposed to any kind of character arc or, the background sort of before and after, like why we got here and things like that. It's really interesting.
I kind of like the like leaving that up to the reader as well. I sometimes feel like, things can be too over-explained, and I feel like it's kind of having a bit of respect for your readers, that you let them bring whatever they want, or, carry on whatever they want after they've finished the story. Yeah,
definitely. Because reading is a sort of strange medium where it's almost a cooperation between the author and the reader, where the reader is, whilst the author is sort of leading the way and guiding the journey, the reader is also putting all of their own flourishes and things into their imagination as they read it.
Exactly. And it's really, I think that's what's so beautiful about it, isn't it? Because everybody has a different experience of reading one story. They build up the sets in their own mind, the character stories, everything. And that's what's really incredible about it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you like to focus in on moments, and you wanted to look at these moments from different perspectives. What's the seed of each of these stories? Like, how do you find the inspiration and start each one out?
It was quite varied. So I knew that I had I started off with 5, I suppose, like those moments that I really wanted to focus on, and they had just come from either they were sort of bits of people that I knew or characters that I'd been making up in my own head, or sometimes you overhear conversations and you think, oh, that would be really interesting to build out into a story. Like, for example, Junction 64 is set in a Burger King in a service station in my hometown, and my friends used to work at that Burger King, and it was always like this weird, it's kind of like service stations are this weird transient places which people bring themselves to, and they bring a lot of baggage, and then they're there and then they move on. But my friends work there all the time, and so they saw all of these transient people, and it was just like a really funny place, because working in Burger King, it was minging, they hated it. But it was they always had really funny stories. And so that sort of, I was friends with them when I was 16. And so I've had that in my head for a really long time. And then other ones, like Self-Portrait, is about, it's about this 75-year-old artist in New York, and it's a kind of like her preparing for her last solo exhibition. And that was inspired, I was in New York in this Japanese place in Midtown, which is such a weird area of New York. And I saw these 2 women having lunch together, and I don't know whether they were partners or not, but that their sort of relationship and dynamic really influenced or inspired that story, and I sort of built it out from just seeing these 2 women having lunch together.
Yeah, so it's very much real life experience or sort of secondhand experience that you've spoken to someone, they've told you about something that's happened, and those are kind of the seeds of inception for all of these stories.
Yeah, and I guess also I wanted, in thinking about that experience of being watched as women, I wanted to cover off different things. So I wanted to have a friendship in there. I wanted to have something in a work scenario. I wanted to have a mother-daughter relationship. So then I also thought about what would be most interesting to look at through the mother-daughter lens or the sister lens. And there's a story about 3 sisters. So yeah, it was kind of thinking of things that I've seen or overheard, and then also I wanted to cover off sort of specific areas as well.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. Showcasing and championing the lives of modern women is something you've been doing for a long time with Riposte, of course, the magazine that you founded. So When did it begin? When did you sort of start on this advocacy for women's voices?
I think, well, Riposte started in 2013. The first issue came out, but I'd worked on it for maybe a year beforehand while I was working full time. But I think around that time, sort of coming out of the noughties, it felt like a really toxic time to be a woman. Like there was, like after the 90s and sort of Riot Girl and even, like Girl Power, Spice Girls, their sort of rallying cry.
Yeah.
It felt like the noughties was almost like a pushback. And then you had this really toxic, like, Heat and Now magazine, and female celebrities were like hounded relentlessly, and it just felt like a bad time throughout that decade. And coming of age in that era, it was like, whoa, this is really horrible. And I definitely internalized a lot of it. And then I think coming out of that, I was like, this is not, like, this cannot carry on. And then, because I was a teenager, like early teenager in the 90s, I knew that there was another way of being and that I didn't feel like this was right. And so looking around, at women's media, that wasn't reflected back. There was, I think Gentle Woman started in like 2012, but even like mainstream, like Elle and Vogue are so much better now, but they were horrendous. And like I was saying, those like Heat and Now and whatever the other titles were at the time, those like really trashy magazines, they were huge. And they were, every week it was like, look at how fat this woman is, look at her cellulite, look at her falling down drunk. There was like this policing of women's bodies and behaviour that just felt so toxic and stifling. So I wanted to make something that I wanted to read, basically, in quite a selfish way. And that reflected like the lives of the women that I was friends with, because it just didn't feel like that any of that was being reflected. Like women's media was just, it was really sort of fashion and beauty, whereas men's media, like I used to buy Monocle, I don't anymore, but I used to buy that quite a lot because it had business and politics and like culture and design, and there was nothing like that aimed at women. So that was the sort of starting point.
Yeah, it was very much, it's shocking how recent we've kind of moved out of these antiquated roles of where men and women sit in society, and we're not even all the way there yet. But publications like Riposte are doing a lot to, change that predisposition about the world and society. And I think it's great. It's really, really good.
It feels like at that time as well, like as we launched in 2013, it was like a flurry of different platforms and magazines. Like there was, which a lot of them have sadly closed now. There was like The Debrief, there was Broadly, Polyester, which is still around. Lauren Laverne had The Pool for a while. There was a lot of different titles that came out, and I think there was like a real pushback, and it's weird because, like I said, like a lot of them have folded. I'm not sure 100% why. I guess the business model of like giving away free content, like it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
But there was a definite like flurry of similar titles trying to do the same thing, I guess.
It makes sense because it's something that you just said, and I hear a lot in publishing, which most of the time is when people are talking about fiction, is write something that you would like to read. And it obviously doesn't just apply to fiction. And the fact that there were so many similar publications coming out around the same time obviously shows you that there were a lot of people who wanted to read things like Riposte that were putting out women's voices.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of sad that it's dwindled down. I think there's still the appetite there, but I think indie publishing is it's a hard business. It's very difficult to make money.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to sustain. And I think a lot of the people who started around the same time have just, it's like I say, it's just unsustainable for a lot of people. So it's difficult to make it work financially.
Yeah. So for everyone listening who isn't familiar with Riposte, do you want to give the sort of elevator pitch of what you guys put out?
Yeah, we are. So Riposte is a biannual printed magazine and online platform. aimed at women and non-binary people. And we used to bill ourselves as a smart magazine for women, but it started to feel a bit like self-satisfied in a way. So we explore the lives of modern women, basically. So we cover lots of different topics, from like business and politics to social justice and fashion and different things. And so twice a year we do a printed magazine, which is distributed around the world, and then we do a monthly digital edition, which explores a different theme each month, and sort of we bring different perspectives to look at each theme. And then we have events which haven't happened as much as we'd like, over the pandemic, but we're hoping to bring them back.
Yeah. Do you also run workshops?
Yeah, we do workshops. Again, not as much as I'd like to, but we're hoping to sort of get that back up and running.
And what sort of workshops are they?
It depends. We've done various different ones. We've done collage workshops and aromatherapy. It depends. Like if we have, we used to do a lot of events, like a full day of events around the launch of each issue. So we would have, like I say, aromatherapy or collage or screen printing workshops, more on the creative side.
Yes, but obviously because of COVID and lockdown, you've not been able to do those recently. Do you have any coming up, workshops or events?
No, not at the minute. We're looking at stuff for September, so hopefully we'll have a full programme from then.
Okay, cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Riposte, we've talked about the book. Does the book, as sort of different perspectives of different women, does it sort of feel like an extension of your work with Riposte to you?
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I wanted. Like, I wanted to sort of explore those different perspectives, and I suppose it's, to sort of bring those different voices and different experiences. I didn't want to write it from just one singular voice like you would in a novel. I didn't feel like this theme lent itself to that. Whereas I'm actually writing something new at the minute, and that is a novel, but from one voice. But yeah, it does definitely feel like an extension of my background in Riposte.
Yeah, but that's great. I mean, write what you know. So another adage you always hear. So
yeah, and it's really, I've heard that so many times, but it's so true. And whenever I did, like, I wrote some different stories that I then ended up deleting that didn't ring true at all. And you really notice it when you're trying to sort of step into a voice or a character that you literally have no idea about.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Switching gears a little, although you are speaking about putting yourself in the shoes of the character as part of the process. How, obviously you have a lot of experience producing and editing and working on Riposte. How did you find the publishing experience with your first book?
I found it really weird, to be honest. It's quite because I'm normally the other side of it, so I really enjoyed it. But it was quite a strange thing, because when you write your first book, I don't know how it is moving forward, but it's not personal, because these aren't personal stories, but it's a very personal process.
Yeah. So
I was really, I guess, kind of precious about it, and then you hand it over, and then it's out of your control, which is very strange. But I worked with Abigail Bergstrom. She was really amazing. So she wasn't on the publishing team. I worked with her sort of independently, and she did a really fine comb edit of the manuscript when it was 2/3 done.
Right.
And that was really amazing, because she was really respectful, but also really challenging in a good way, in terms of she would point out, these bits are really good and these bits are really terrible. So you need to bring the good bits to the bad bits. And she was just very I just really trusted her, and she was really insightful and really encouraging. And I think you need someone like that when you've not done it before.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Did you feel like you developed a thick skin from your work in Riposte, or did you not handle the editing process that well?
It's weird because I think with Riposte it's always other people's work, so that's like it's like a joint effort. So I always love putting it out because it feels like a bit of a party and there's loads of people involved and it's like you kind of come together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this, it's not that I did it. I know I actually really, I don't know, enjoyed's not the right word, but I really welcomed the criticism because I think like if you've never done it before, it's good for people to be like, it would have felt more weird if everyone was like, yeah, this is really good. It was really useful for people to be like, no, this is not good and this is why it's not good.
Yeah, it's nice for people to sing your praises and say how wonderful it is, but not particularly helpful.
No, yeah, exactly. Like I read this thing a while ago when someone was like going on about how when their editor drags them, they basically like lap it up. They're like, yes, because they know that it's going to make them a better writer, so they welcome it.
Yeah, and always sometimes it's always difficult to hear criticism about your work because you do put so much time and effort and yourself into it. But it's always good to remember that whole team is on your side. Everyone's working to try and make it better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like when you're in the editing process, it's not like if someone's got a critique or they're offering some advice, it's not because they don't understand what you're trying to do. It's not just some random person on the internet who hasn't really tried to understand anything about the work. They get it. And like you say, they're trying to help you make it better. I think it's different. Like I'm gonna try and not read anything on the internet because that feels a bit more of like a rabbit hole of just random people being like, no, I don't like this, or it's for various different reasons which you have no control over.
Yes, yeah. The thing I always hear from authors is never go on Goodreads. Just once your book's out, don't go on Goodreads.
I heard this guy on This American Life, and he was saying that he always goes on Amazon and he reads the reviews of his book. And he finds the people who've written bad ones, and then he goes and finds what they've bought. And if he doesn't agree with what they've bought in the past, he's like, oh, I don't agree with your review, so that's fine. And Ira Glass, the presenter, was just like, that is really sadistic. Like, why are you doing that? It's awful.
It's masochistic. I
think. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
Unless you're, there's Joe Abercrombie is one of my favorite authors, and he does a thing where I don't remember if it's every week or every month, but he will look up 1-star reviews of his book and then tweet them to his followers, of which he has like thousands and thousands. Although I think he's stopped because I saw one time he did it and his fans had cottoned on and were basically giving him 1-star reviews, but they were really good, so that he would retweet them.
Yeah, it's worth, I suppose, isn't it? Just like taking everything with a pinch of salt. Like you just kind of get involved in that side of things. I think you go mad. And
to be honest, I think, and this doesn't just apply to books. I think it's any kind of creative outlet. Is you're never going to please everyone, and if you're trying to create something that pleases everyone, it's going to be so basic and just simple and like just safe, and no one's going to love it, but at the same time I guess no one's going to hate it. And it's like, would you rather everyone was just sort of apathetic about it, or would you prefer to have some people really love it and some people be like, it's not for me?
Exactly. I think the problem is that people have like, it's just the classic thing on the internet, isn't it? People just forget that there's a person on the other side, kind of sometimes bit much. And also the accessibility, like I'm getting tagged in things in the minute, which is for the most part really nice, but I'm like, it also makes us very anxious because I'm like, I could be one click away from ruining my day. So I'm like, I don't know how to navigate that quite yet.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine and her agent were on the podcast a while ago, and we were talking about that very thing of sometimes if there's a typo or something in the book after it's published, don't tag the author and tell them about it, because there's nothing they can do and you're just going to ruin their day.
Exactly. It's like not helpful.
Yeah. Only tag an author if you have something, positive to say, because if the book's out, there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
done, So you mentioned you were working on a follow-up, and I was going to ask, will it be more short stories? But you said it's going to be a long-form novel, and I'm sure you're probably not allowed to say that much about it, but how come the switch to long-form?
Yeah, it's a novel, and I'm like just sent a bit of it off actually, like 25,000 words in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the switch is because this story I have it mapped out, and I have a character that I want to develop, and all of the other characters around this protagonist. Whereas this Watching Women and Girls, I guess the main character is the gaze, and then like all of the supporting characters are the different narratives, the different characters throughout the different stories. So yeah, and I've been enjoying the process of writing a longer form, to be honest. It's just, but I guess, I don't know, I've wanted to do this since I was a little kid, so it's almost like every time I get like space in my day to write, it's just I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, that kind of joy and enthusiasm always comes through in the writing. If that's what you're feeling while you're writing, it's going to come through, and I'm sure it's going to be great.
I hope so. I think, it's that thing, isn't it? It's kind of not, doesn't always go well, but I think it's like that understanding of the whole process. Like, you have to rewrite a book maybe like 30 times, and if you get, like, I've got my head around that, so I feel kind of comfortable. Like, I don't feel I have to nail it every day, and that's fine. And I feel like and I also haven't got the time and the finances to do it all day every day. So it's like, if I don't have a good productive few hours, it's fine, because then I do another load of different stuff, and then I don't feel like terrible that I only wrote 3 sentences.
I think that's fine. I think it can be really healthy in any creative pursuit to not be doing it 100% of the time. Go off and do other things. Let your brain sort of have that ticking over subconsciously, but don't actively think about it. So when you come back to it, you come back more fresh with more ideas, ready to kind of keep going. I find if you, for instance, took like a week off and you spent every day writing, this is my own experience, is that I start getting bored because I don't have a break from it, and I need that break to sort of reinvigorate the creative energy.
Do you think as well it's like the myth of the writer? Like, sometimes I see people on Instagram and they have like these beautiful studios in their gardens, and I'm like kind of jealous, and also like writing, the life of a writer has been mythologized for such a long time that you think you should have all this time and you should be able to luxuriate in your craft, but it's just not, it's not real, is it? For like the majority of writers, they're doing it 2 hours a day around like a million other things.
Yes. Yeah. It always makes me laugh if you watch a television series or a movie where there's an author and they're this super laid back academic with a beautiful like library studio that they write in every day, and somehow they've only had a few books out, but they seem to be millionaires. And
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is not the experience.
It really isn't, and it's weird, isn't it? I've been thinking about this a lot, like the finances of literature. Like, it's really messed up, and I guess it's why there's not so many working class who are being published, because the time it takes to work on something, like, you have to invest your time and your energy and your finances, and if you can't afford to do that, if you have to work full time to pay for everything, pay for your rent and bills and kids and stuff, like, it's just not realistic.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, this is an issue across all creative industries as well. You see it with acting as well, where the most prestigious schools are extremely expensive. You need, very good grades and things to go to ROD or whatever. So it's easy to forget because of the way that the media works, that the people making millions are the 0.1% of that industry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's very exciting to hear about your follow-up, and that you're really enjoying writing this long-form style from a single point of view. It sounds like you're really on top of it. You've got it. You know the character, you know the plan, it's mapped out. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Before we get on to the final question, what is the best piece of advice that you've been given throughout your career?
So many that I now can't think of. I think what I was saying before about, maybe we chatted about before we recorded, that Abigail Bergstrom said, and then she was talking about, like the process of writing and publishing a book, and how it's basically a collection of small little things that then amount to like the release and your career. And I guess that's any career, like it's just worth enjoying like the small little wins along the way, because that's all it is. It's not like a big pivotal moment where you feel like, yes, I've arrived or I've nailed this. It's like that. I don't think that ever really happens. It's just because, even the same with Riposte, like even when we have a magazine launch, it's been a series of small wins of like getting the first PDF from the designer and seeing it all as one body of work. That's really exciting. And then seeing it as when it comes back from the printers, and then at the launch, and then you see it in the shops. It's like you have to sort of celebrate all of those little wins, and I guess like take the focus on them rather than the negatives, because there's so many things that perhaps won't go your way or it doesn't go right, and it's very easy to get like bogged down in those things where you feel like it's not going right. So sort of celebrate those small wins all the way along the process.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, it is a roller coaster full of ups and downs. And I think especially with publishing, because it's easy to think that when the book comes out, the launch day, that's the big success, the win. But then bear in mind, with the speed of publishing, the author has been writing that book, for 2-3 years prior to that. They've been editing it for 6 months plus. Like, they have seen every iteration of that book. They saw the cover months ago.
Yeah.
They've seen all the bits and bobs, so when the launch comes, it's not as big a thing as you would think, because you've been doing all these little things, but it's still important to celebrate all of those little victories.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the most exciting point was actually getting the go ahead.
Yeah.
When I'd written, I think I'd done 10 of them, but that was the real, when I got the contract through, that was I think that was the most exciting part, because it's like, this is what I've really wanted to do since I was a kid. This PDF, it's it's really exciting.
This email on my screen is let's go.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so true though, because that is the moment when you knew it was happening, that it was a reality, that it was real. The launch is obviously going to be very exciting, but the moment when you've signed the contract and the publisher has said, we're publishing this is going to be a book, that is when it's no longer sort of imaginary or hopeful. Yeah,
exactly. And I suppose you don't know what's going to come next. So at that point, you're just full of excitement and enthusiasm, and you don't
know all the hard stuff that's yet to come.
You're just like, oh, cool, let's go to the pub and celebrate.
Now I'll be just like the people in the movies, and I'll be a millionaire in my library.
I'm going to get one of those garden shed things.
Yeah. I'll fit in with the crowd on Instagram. It'll be great.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, that's brilliant advice. Celebrate all the little wins. It's very important. And that brings us to the final question, which, as always, is, Danielle, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would it be?
It would be Raymond Carver's All of Us, which is his collected poems.
Oh, nice.
And it's like a big tome. I think it's 386 pages.
Okay.
And it's just really, his poems are even more compact versions of his short stories, and really beautiful. And there's so many of them in this book that I would be able to read it and then reread it again and again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really beautiful. I highly recommend it.
Oh, we'll check it out. I mean, poetry is always a winner, I think, with me, because even if there was just one poem, I feel like you can reread a poem and find new meaning in it in a different way that you can with prose. You can always reread a story and find different sort of details and things and minutiae, but with a poem, you can almost read it sort of in a different perspective, and then it means a completely different thing, which is really great.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for coming on and sharing your experience and telling us all about Riposte and the book. It's been really great chatting with you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure on this sunny Tuesday afternoon.
And for everyone listening, Danielle's book, Watching Women and Girls, is out 23rd of June. To keep up with everything that she's doing, follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Danielle Pender. To keep up with everything that's happening with Riposte, you can follow on Instagram and Twitter at Riposte Magazine. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter at Right and Wrong UK, or on Instagram at Right and Wrong Podcast. Thanks again to Danielle, and thanks to everybody for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks for hanging around until the end. If you're interested in starting your own podcast but aren't really sure what that looks like, I can't recommend Zencastr enough. It's so simple to host, record, and download your podcast with, and it even has a built-in transcription AI. It functions entirely in the internet browser, which means all your guests have to do is click on a link and they'll be brought into the conversation. If you click on the link in the description, you'll get 30% off the first 3 months. All you have to do is click on the link in the description. Thanks again for supporting the show, and we'll see you in the next episode.